Good afternoon, everyone. This is 𝘎𝑚 from Razorleaf. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to bring you part two of a series that 𝘎𝑗𝑗𝙊𝙋𝑼, my colleague here, who's going to be sharing this webinar today about a part two on this Unpacking 3D Experience series. So he's been taking us through how to use 3D Experience. Today we're going to look at using product definition and planning for the GoPro mount. A couple of housekeeping notes. We are recording this and we'll be sharing the recording in our YouTube page, and we'll be sending it out in email to our attendees. And if you have questions, please put them in the questions panel and we will be sure to answer them at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kip.
Thank you very much, Julianne. My name is 𝘎𝑗𝑗𝙊𝙋 with Razorleaf Corporation. I'm in the pre-sales technical solution architect. As Julian mentioned, we're unpacking the 3D experience. We're looking at different areas of product development. You know, last time we met, we talked about the ideation and market definition. You know, and I talked about how do you take the GoPro mount from an idea, do the marketing and things like that. And what we presented last time, we chose a GoPro mount to make. We built our team. And then we chose a 3D experience as our platform to do our development and design and collaboration with. In there, we also created what was called a SWIM community, and we created some ideas. And one of the ideas was around the materials to be used. What should we use for the material? And we used an idea, and during that idea, we took it from different phases of an idea, of a new idea to a concept to a project plan. And once it got to that stage, we decided that's the right thing to take into a requirement for how do we build or what are we going to use for the GoPro mount itself. So we used the functionality in the SWIM community to turn that idea into an actual requirement for the definition of the product. So today we're going to look at the requirements of product definition in planning stages and what that looks like, and an overview of those different things that we did. So just to give you an idea of what we are talking about when we look at what does that structure look like, a requirement or models, versions, and projects and management. You know, the relationship between all of this and developing a product is quite complex sometimes. And it seems very difficult to understand, but it's really quite simple when you understand the relationship between the different types of objects. So what I've done here is just kind of laid out the different relationships and how they interact. I'll go through this as I present today, and hopefully you'll get a better understanding of the relationship between them. And before there's any 3D objects or CAD and things like that are done, how does everything work together to bring a product to market? So we'll start out with requirements management. And what requirements management is about collecting, analyzing, refining, prioritizing requirements, and then validating those needs against what customers, internal, external, are, and have a clear, consistent communication across the enterprise. So the different steps in that, what that looks like is you look at what the market needs are, define and decompose the requirements into specifications. You allocate those requirements to a product model. You release the requirements, and then you define your features and scope them and satisfy those requirements. So when we look at requirement structure on the interface in 3D experience, you have requirement specifications, chapters, requirements, and comments. And you can build that structure right inside of the 3D experience. I'm using the web app. You also have a dashboard app widget that you can use to do that. I'm a little bit more comfortable with this one for the demonstration purposes, but you could certainly use the widget to do the same thing. So if you look, I have a top level, which is my container specification, requirement specification. Underneath here, I have chapters, and you can divide this however you want. So, and then underneath chapters, you can have sub-chapters and requirements there, and you can have comments, and then you can also have under requirements, you can have use cases and test cases as well. And we'll kind of look at that structure, what that looks like. And over here, you'll see all the information about that. What content is there? What side of the V curve is it on? Is it in RFLP? Where is it at in the structure? Its classification of functional, non-functional things like that, what state they're in, and then you also see what the level of difficulty is and what the priority is and things like that as well. And then the configuration context is when I define this requirement, I said the context of this requirement is about the GoPro mount that we have. And to further that, I said that it goes to a specific material, right? So we wanted the variant and option assigned to the requirement, so that way we know we create that link between just having a requirement and actually having it fit with the configuration of the object. So when we look at the structure, you know, kind of try to break it down a little bit to make it more visual for some of us. Requirements and options. Requirements are linked to options and values or variants and values inside of your model definition. And I don't mean your 3D model. This is your product model. Okay? And then you have use cases, test cases, and requirement specification. So I try to lay out here a kind of a tree view of what that looks like. So the requirement is satisfied either by options or option values or variants and variant values. So we'll kind of see that as we go along as well. So let's take a look at that and see what it looks like in the 3D experience. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to open up my product manager role. I'm going to open up the requirements app. And when I look at the requirements, I see all the requirements that I have that are available. And then I'm going to build a specification that I have for the GoPro mount. In here, I've already built my chapters. I've created some structure already. I've had a section for fasteners, adhesive, things like that. One of the things that we decided during the development was that I wanted a different material other than just 316 stainless. I wanted a new material that we thought was better. So we went with the Martin stainless steel instead of just the plain 316. Now I can also, when I create a new material, I can set or specification, I can set the difficulty, the classification, the status, and any decisions that we have as well. So we create the classification, or the specification, sorry, and it shows here, and it shows the information about it. Now, we also want to look at any related objects to that specification. Do I have any use cases, test cases? It's satisfied by something, right? So here we're creating a use case to be able to say, here's how we want to test it or something like that. You know, we need to validate the material for some way, right? Maybe you have different information. Maybe we want to test the tensile strength, right? So the use case is that, and then the test case that we create against it as well. So maybe it's to test the tensile strength, right? So you get the idea is you get be able to create use cases and test cases about your requirement, and they're stored against it. And then the following up with that is you want to be able to satisfy that as well at some point. So here we'll look at it. We have all the different information. We have the suspect where we can validate this requirement as well as suspect, valid or invalid. We're going ahead and save it. We have a good idea that it's the right one. So now that we've created that, we'll refresh our screen, and then we have all the information here as well. Now we want to relate the specification to a configuration context, which is the model version or the specific model version that it has or model that we're working with, that we're developing for this GoPro mount. And the other part we want to be able to do is we want to go ahead and set it to what variant does it solve, right? What does it resolve? So when we select here, we can edit here in many different ways. I'm just using this interface to link this one to this variant in the platform. So once I do that, I select it, I can validate that the code is correct, and we say, okay, we go ahead and save it. So what I've done is created a new specification for material. I've added it to the configuration context of the model version and the specific variant or options that belong to that as well. So that way, when I do my validation testing or Q&A and things like that, I am very certain of what was defined in the requirements. And that's important to understand of the whole reason of creating requirements and validation during the development of a product, so that when you get to engineering or into prototype, into CAD or Q&A, you know what was defined, why it was defined, and what the specific things are about it. This is why we set all this up. Now, I'm not doing any traceability. You certainly have roles for traceability on requirements and things like that as well. But here we'll go ahead and set the satisfied by in here as well. So it's all set up for that requirement now. So when we come back into our presentation, the next thing we want to look at is the product management. Now remember, we looked at the model version, and we had the specification. How does that link to the model version? So we defined our requirements. Now we start defining the model versions and things like that, and they drive the development of the product for the customer requirements. Ensure all the requirements are delivered, and we manage the standard product configuration of variants. You as a company might have very specific variability of colors or of materials that you use that are proprietary. You can create standards and then use those across your different products. So what does that look like in the platform? When we look at the structure using the variant management tool, you'll see you have the model, the GoPro Mount, you'll have the model version. You may have multiple model versions over time. It evolves from maybe 1 year to the next, or one geo to the next. You may have multiple model versions, and underneath those model versions, configurations that are available. Sorry. So in those configurations, you might have different options, variant values, or options and values that are specific to those configurations. And what we see over here, when I do a compare for the configurations, I see that in this configuration, I can have a black polycarbonate. In this configuration, I have red stainless steel. And these are what defines the configuration out of all the option and variants that were defined or available, allocated to this model version. These are what was selected as valid. Well, in the variability, the model version's variability and allocation chart, when I look at it, I can see that for the color material, for the different ones, here's where I select what's available for each one. So when I look at that GoPro, that model version B, I say that the black one, the yellow and silver colors are available, and they're only available polycarbonate at this point. Now I might create a new revision C, model version C, and I say, okay, well in C, it's available with stainless or polycarbonate. So over time, you can evolve your product, and it's as simply as about allocating the options and variants to each one. So this is the requirements allocation. So when I look at here, these are all the different allocation requirements that were allocated to this model version. So the different types, material or mounting screws or anything else, you might have a gearbox or other things, any type of thing that are the requirements that are allocated to this definition of the product will show up here. So let's take a look at what how that interacts in the platform. So here again, we're going to look at our model version, the GoPro. We'll look at the model version. See that I have a model version A in here as well. And we developed this to a certain point. We decided this isn't what we wanted. So we evolved or created a new model version B, and we decided we want to move forward in this one. So that's why we have model version A and model version B, because during prototyping, we decided A didn't work for what we wanted. So here we say, here's how we set the allocation. So when we selected the material, select the allocation chart, here's where we can define what is available for that specific one. Simple as creating a check mark or checking off which ones you want available. So when we look at the product configurations, I can create new configurations, and in the configuration table, I select the different ones. Now, there's two different types of of variability here. One is a option and one are variants. The difference between the two of them, in one, you can only select one of them, and the other one, you can select multiples. So that's why you have two different types, is what you can do, how you can select things. So you'll notice in the bottom one, I can only select one. In the top one, I can select multiple colors. Now, it could be anything that you wanted to be able to define your product. So there again, now we can edit it and we can say, okay, well, let's go ahead and add in the red one and make that available as an option for selection of the configurations as well. So there we go. So now we have all the different ones. Now we have red in there as well. So now now that we've allocated the red color to it, now we can apply it as a configurable item that is inside of there. So let's look at the requirements now. Again, we define the requirement. Now we see that here. We see there's our new requirement, and we still see the original stainless still there as well. So we can see that we have some that are valid and we have some that are suspect. So we're going to go ahead and validate the ones that we believe are accurate or true and what we want to use. So we're going to go ahead and make it valid. And then the stainless steel one, we can say not valid, right? So it becomes a not valid requirement for this. I could delete it from here, but it's easier for traceability if we just say not valid. So here, again, so for the model version in our structure, the requirements that were defined are allocated to this model version. And here we see the validation, the owner, the priorities, the level of difficulty, and any specification that they belong to as well. So we'll move on to project management, and we use project management as governance. So it's great to say that we have requirements. It's great to say we have a product definition, but how do we govern that? How do we make sure that we're doing things on time? The tasks needed to do those things are being completed in the right time, in the right phases. So project management gives us the ability to drive phases, tasks, have gates and milestones during the product development. You know, they're grouped together in a way so that people are meeting their targets. And then we can have milestones. Maybe there's a funding milestone, maybe there's a test or a prototype or regulatory test that has to be done. So we can embed milestones in there as well and have gates and phases, decisions to determine whether that project moves forward or if we make a different path or we need to do different things. So there's a lot of activities of tasks that need to be done, assigned to people, deliverables that need to be done, and have a good interface for the project manager or the product team to be able to view the status of everything's going on. So what we do is we define a project, we define a schedule, we define the project team, and we set the product governance. So the project structure looks a little bit like this in the platform. And when you first go into the project, you have the schedule status, the project manager dashboard, and you see the project overview, press, late tasks, things like that. You have tasks down here, tasks with deliverables, top level task. You have the Gantt chart view, which gives you the ability to have precedence inside of from task to task or links. So start to finish, finish to start. You can set lag time, things like that as well. And you can also have the burn down. Now there's a little bit more in here, but these are kind of the high level that you see inside of it. So in the structure view, it looks more like an indented process or your WBS process where you have the project itself, different phases, different tasks, milestones, gates, and things like that in here. And then you see here's the predecessors, predecessors this one, so these must be completed before these. And then you have a deliverable, so these are actual links as well. So if I clicked on one of these in the interface or in the platform, it would actually take me to that deliverable, whether it's a document, a 3D CAD, or a specification, whatever that is, right? So in the phase gate view, what you see is where you're currently at in the project phase, and then if up and what phases are left, what the things were, start date and actual start date and finish dates were there as well. So it gives you a good indicator, a good overview of the current status of the project. The Gantt chart is that it gives you the ability to manage this, and you can actually drag and drop these in the platform to be able to adjust them or create precedents on each other. So it's you can manipulate it very well. You can slide them back and forth and everything. So what does that roadmap look like between the product model version and the projects? And why do we do that? Well, like I said, when I have a model version B, there's phases of development of a new product that says these things need to be done in each phase for us to be able to get this to market. So it's not just a bunch of emails and status sheets, Excel files, or PowerPoints, right? So it's actually a link. You actually create the link between the model version and the project. When you do that, you also say in that project, I have all these tasks, but only 3 of these tasks are required to get this to market. I might have tasks in the project like order tools or equipment, right, that aren't part of the development of the model itself. So I could have a lot of tasks that aren't there. So this gives us the ability to select which tasks need to be done in this project to get this model version to market. So let's take a look at how that looks. So here I have my project, my GoPro Mount project. And again, here's all of my dashboard. And you'll notice that here in the dashboard, I have progress, late task. 33% of my tasks have been late, 10% are on time, and top level tasks up here, tasks with deliverables, all tasks here. And as you'll notice, as I click on them, they filter down here at the bottom to show me all the tasks that are part of that. So if we look at the phase gate view, right now, we are in the requirements definition. We want to define we define the requirements. We'll get to this gate. Next phase is engineering product design. So right now in the GoPro product definition, we've done product definition requirements, we've done marketing, all that kind of stuff. So we're in these 2 different areas. So the definition, and then we'll move through a gate. Now, in the business status, what we decided early on in the project was that there's a risk. And one of those risks has to do with material. What we decided is early on was that material may be in a volatile area where maybe we think that it's going to be difficult to get that material. So what we did is we created a risk. Now, in this risk, I want to associate it to the specific task that it's showing a risk about, right? So here I have a risk, and I say it contributes to, and then I'm going to select the specific task or tasks that it applies to. So now I've created my link, not just saying there's a risk, but what is it a risk to, and how do I manage that risk? Right? So here I am, I have my risk and everything else, and so I can manage that in greater detail as a project manager. Because it's more than just about assigning tasks or having deliverables. It's about aligning the project with the development of the product, which has requirements, and meeting all of that and being able to communicate all of that across the enterprise without email, spreadsheets, PowerPoints, and everything else. So this is all live data, and when people do work, it's automatically reflected in the platform. So this kind of adds to that digital thread discussion of how do I make sure that everything is being done in the proper order and make sure that everything is tied together, right? So we're utilizing the tools, including project management, to be able to keep track of everything. So again, here's my requirements. I'm going to add another requirement as a deliverable. So I want to add the entire materials from the 3D swim. So the entire requirement of the swim community that we created, the old one, because we decided on this new one instead of the other one. Right? So we're able to update the project at will or as needed to be able to make sure we're aligned with everything that's going on. So my gate that I'm in, we've decided all of the materials are defined now. We want to move on in the project, and we had a gate there in between material that we're all aligned. We agree, and then once it's all agreed upon, you can say that gate is completed. And we make sure that everything is governed the way it's supposed to be. We've linked the model version to the project. So in here, there's my project that the model versions are assigned to, and here's all the tasks associated to that, right? So again, we need to validate that all the work is being done before we go through the gate of saying this gate is complete. Let's make sure that all the tasks are being done as well. Now, some of these tasks may need to be done during the requirements definition, some may need to be done in the engineering definition and things like that. So as you define the tasks that need to be done, they also go into the project where you need them to go. So we're going to go ahead and add the other tasks for engineering, product definition, prototype, those phases. We're going to go ahead and add those in there as well. Okay. And this is about governance, about that link between the project and the model version to make sure we have a full understanding of everything going on. Now we can go ahead and say, yep, everything is aligned, everything's done, we've completed everything, and we're good with the current phase. So now that we've completed the gate, we can complete the phase, and we should be able to go into the next phase of the project. So now, when we first started, we had this one completed. We've defined our requirements, our requirement definition, our model versions. We've linked everything together, and we've said it's all approved and we're happy with it. Now we're going to move on the next one. We'll go into the engineering product design phase. So here again, I'm going to circle back to where we started out at with the roadmap of what all we looked at. So we looked at the requirements. We have the requirements that were satisfied by. We have options and variants that are attached to model versions. These options and variants satisfy a requirement. The model version is governed by a project. The project has phases and tasks, and those tasks are assigned with the model version, so that way you know what needs to happen, because in a project there may be many tasks that aren't part of developing the model version. So in the model, is part of a product line, a model version, and then your project is your phases and tasks that go with it, and then these are all part of your model version as well. Okay. So as we move forward into the next phase, our next phase of the defining the product, we've gone from ideation to market, requirements, and product definition to planning. Now that we have an idea of what we want to do, the requirements, and how we want to do that, the next phase is actually to do the 3D CAD design and create a prototype. So in our next one for design and prototype is scheduled for December 5th. So I hope you'll see me there when it comes out. And for that, I'll open up for questions.
All right. Great presentation, Kip. Thanks so much. Anybody have any questions? Please put them in the questions panel and we will take them as we go here. So we got a question here coming in. For requirements management, what role was used in the presentation?
So the role that I was used during product manager is PDM, is product manager. You also get the requirements management with the product architect and requirements engineer. So the trigrams for Dassault are PDM, PDA, and TRM.
Okay, great. Next question. Can you create and manage requirements from a Microsoft Word document?
Yes, you can. So a lot of times customers will send you, here's our requirement for our product. And that may not be a configuration that you have. So if they send you a Word document or even an Excel file, you can import those in with the requirements management integrate. You can create chapters inside of them. You can create your main requirement structures. You can your specifications and things like that from inside of the document, and then you can import that in, and it will create that structure for you. You can also, once you've defined them, you could export them into a Word document and being able to manipulate them from there as well.
Thanks. All right. Another question here. In the products model, I'm sorry, in the product models, can you have multiple configurations with different options?
Yes, and this is a fundamental function of the configuration management, like variability for different geos or specific options for a customer. You know, you need to be able to have different ones inside of there as well. So to be able to manage those inside of there is absolutely fundamental. So yes.
Okay, great. If anyone has any questions, just put them in the questions panel. All right, we have another one here. You presented a project link to the model version. What role was used for this one?
So I use two roles. I use product manager and project manager. So the product manager is PDM and the project is DPM. The project manager creates the project with the phases, gates, and tasks, and the product manager creates the scope link to the project.
Okay, great. And then another question here. You presented a project link to the model version. Oh, I'm sorry, I just asked you that question. Sorry. I'm getting confused. Can you manage resources with project management?
You can. I didn't show it, you know, but it's critical to what we started out with before. We created a team of people and we added those to our community. What I didn't show in project management for today was be able to have what we call resource pools and resource requests. So I can actually create those and then set up managers of those resource pools. So in a project, I can say I need these skill sets, these people, and request them in a resource pool and a resource request. And then the manager can say, here's the people I need, or here's who's available. So yeah, you can manage resources, and you can even allocate certain tasks by percentages. Maybe you have a task and 3 people are working on it. One person's 50%, the other 2 are 25%. So you can even allocate tasks in that way as well.
Great. And we got one more that just came in here. In project management, can you manage more than one model version?
Absolutely. You know, during the development of your product, sometimes you start down a path and move to and decide a different direction. So it's very critical to be able to manage more than one because over time you make different decisions. We're not all perfect and we don't always come up with the best product the right first time. So yes, and you can manage different, maybe there's 2 different markets you're trying to hit. Maybe a US and a European version, you're managing both of them at the same time. So sure, you can manage multiple inside of one project.
Great. All right, I think that's about all the questions I've got in. Anyone else have any more questions? I'll just give it a few seconds here. Not seeing anything come in, so with that, Kip, I want to thank you for your presentation and your demo. That was very good, very interesting. Did you want to talk about what's coming up next?
So what's coming up next is December 5th. The Unpacking 3D Experience will actually start the design process and the prototype process. So in the design phase, you will start looking at how do the requirements lead into the design, how do I manage the planning of that design and prototyping and things like that, and how that fits into the project management and the model versions as well. So we'll tie it all together. We'll tie all the pieces together from the requirements, planning, design, and prototype all together inside of the next.
Hey, great. One more question just came in, Kip. So hopefully, I think we have a minute, we can take it. So the question is, the project schedule was rather simplified. Usually schedules have many more tasks. So first question is, what you demoed Inovia PLM out of the box, or was it Razorleaf customized?
So I'm a big proponent of demonstrating things that are out of the box, right? So what I demoed is very much out of the box. I realize a lot of projects are much more complex than that. It's very hard to take a really complex structure and present it in a webinar like this because it's very hard to understand what's going on. But everything I demoed today is completely out of the box. It does take what Razorleaf has, the skills and things like that, to say, here's how, what's the best practices, and how we implement those with the customer to understand your requirements or your product definitions, so we can help you align either out of the box, configured, or in some cases, customization when it's required.
Great, and you had one more question on this, so thanks, John, for putting this in. Is it practical to use PLM scheduling for detailed work? And Mike Crappy, you're welcome to join the conversation as well.
I think some of that. Yeah, go ahead, Kip.
My question was going to be, when you say detailed work, expand on that a little bit if you could, but unless you can answer it, Mike.
Yeah, I think that depending on how your company, operates in terms of project management, you have to integrate project management or program management from the platform with your business. There are plenty of customers who, will continue to use Microsoft Project because that's what, engineers are comfortable with. That doesn't mean you can't use project management within the platform. That just means that, hey, when we set it up in the platform, you need to let the people that are configuring the solution know that, hey, we want to be able to export the project out so that we can have people look at it, in a tool they're familiar with, namely Microsoft Project. So to answer your question about detailed project scheduling, it can be very detailed, down to task dependencies, all the normal, start to finish, finish to start, with prerequisites. You can even have, people assigned to a task and do hour roll-ups and things of that nature.
And Mike, on the projects, you can also do kind of what if scenarios in project management as well. So you can kind of do tests, and then based on your results of the project testing, you can merge those back into the project too. So the complexity that it's able to do is pretty high. Right? So,
right.
You mentioned being able to use Microsoft Project, but integrating with other tools. I'll throw out the shameless plug is we have a tool called Clover. So if you have a system that you want to integrate and be able to do some of those, we can certainly help with those too.
Okay, great. Thanks, gentlemen. With that, I think we're going to wrap up our webinar, and thanks everyone for your questions and participating today. We appreciate you joining us and learning a little bit more about how to unpack 3D experience with Kip and Mike. We do have, as Kip said, our next webinar is on December 5th. and you'll be getting some communications from us on that. And we'll also be sending out the YouTube link to this recording shortly. Encourage you to share it with other folks who might benefit. All right, and thanks everyone for your time today, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.